We're fearlessly talking about the biggest stories that matter to you the most. Breaking news, John Calipari is finalizing a 5-year deal to become the Arkansas Razorbacks' next head coach, covering college sports like no one else. The biggest guests in sports. We now welcome in Hall of Famer Jim Calhoun.
Such a pride I had, I came to connect.
The legend, Tim Tebow, joins us.
We'll run it back. I like it.
The legend, Herschel Walker. Welcome in, everybody. Tuesday afternoon edition, Aaron Torres Sports Podcast. I'm your host, Aaron Torres. Hope everybody's doing well. Hope everybody's having a great day. We are now 3 days away from the first 12-team college football playoff, but it feels like we got so much to get to. We're probably not going to do the full preview and deep dive until Thursday afternoon show. But when I tell you we got a loaded mid-December show, this thing is jam-packed, okay? So here is what you need to know about today's show. We're going to open Alabama, one of the wildest portal stories that we've ever seen. But as we go on air, Alabama has had 15 different players enter the portal. They've gotten 0 portal commits. Are we watching the Alabama dynasty fall in real time? But then also this portal story I'm going to tell you is one of the more crazy stories I've ever seen, okay? From there, we will talk about, speaking of the portal, tampering. It has gone wild. We saw one of the craziest, I know I'm saying crazy a lot, but it's the truth. One of the craziest examples of tampering in the portal that we have seen. I got to tell you about that. We'll talk a little bit about the wild, weird Sacramento State story. Adam Schefter reporting that Michael Vick interviewed and that they have raised $50 million in NIL, a number that, oh, by the way, would make Texas and Ohio State jealous. So we got a lot to get to. Then after that, a really fun interview. We don't have a lot of guests, but Zach Smith, former assistant coach at Ohio State and Florida, he hosts a very popular Ohio State podcast, Menace to Sports. It is a beast in Ohio. He lives in Columbus. And I want to have him on because I think he covers a lot of things that are interesting to this audience. We talk a little bit about Bill Belichick. He is a guy that has coached college football. What is Bill Belichick actually getting into? And then we do a deep dive into Tennessee, Ohio State. What happens if Ohio State lose? Could Ryan Day be out? What is the temperature of that city right now? When I tell you Zach Smith has a lot to say about the state of Buckeye football, yeah, Zach Smith, you're going to want to stick around for that. Before we get started, a couple quick reminders. First of all, make sure you're subscribed. Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. YouTube, we're closing in on 50,000 subscribers. We're at about 48.2 right now. Can I get 1,800 more people signed up for 50,000 before we get to 2025? I think we cannot do it without your support. Tell friends, tell people, tell everybody, all that good stuff. Also, we are available on podcast form, Apple, Spotify, wherever you get your podcasts. You can go ahead and find the Aaron Torres Pod. Do me a quick favor, leave a 5-star rating and review because we need people to know about this show. Click the like button on YouTube, all that good stuff. Also, before we get started, do want to thank our friends, our partners. We want to thank Collie Puffs and ColliePuffs.com. Okay, so it's the holiday season. You're going to have friends over, people in the house. You're on the couch. You're watching more football. We had 2 Monday night games the other day. You need a snack that is both healthy but delicious. That is where Collie Puffs comes in. Okay, so Collie Puffs, family-owned company. Joey is a football fan. He was actually at, I believe, the Raiders game this weekend, or maybe it was the Rams. I can't keep up with Joey, the founder of Collie Puffs. But basically, he said, look, I'm on the couch. I'm at these tailgates. I'm watching football. I want something that is healthy, but also delicious. I want something that is healthy, but delicious for my kids. And he came up with Collie Puffs. Okay, this is the alternative to the snacks in your grocery aisle. Baked, not fried, healthy ingredients, avocado oil, no grease. But trust the listeners of the pod who have tried Collie Puffs. They are freaking delicious as well. So they're healthy, but darn it, do they taste good. I'm going to make a sandwich after this show for lunch. And guess what I'm going to be having on the side? Some Collie Puffs. So for more information on Collie Puffs, it's really very simple. Go to ColliePuffs.com. That's CAULIPUFFS.com. Also, you can get them on Amazon. So you want to do your boy Torres a solid. Go to Amazon.com. You're ordering stuff for the holidays on that website. And just throw some Collie Puffs in your cart, and good things are going to happen for you. Okay, so ColliePuffs.com, again, also available on Amazon. You're buying gifts for your friends, for your family. Throw some Collie Puffs in. You will not be disappointed. Appreciate your support of the show, but appreciate your support of Calling Puffs as well. With that said, it is a busy midweek show. As I said a minute ago, we will probably preview the college football playoff on Thursday's show. But right now, this second today, there is no more time to waste. Let's get to the topic of the day. And the topic of the day, let me say this, okay? So first of all, the portal is open. It is insane. We're going to get to everything portal related in a minute. But I want to start in one specific place, in one specific school, and that is the University of Alabama, okay? Because I just got a simple question for you, and I got a simple question for the audience. We have seen some great empires in the history of planet Earth. The Incas, the Mayans, the Ottoman Empire, all those crazy empires that you read about in history books. Well, here's my question. Are we watching the fall of Alabama football in real time? I'm not saying we're there yet, but we seem to be getting closer and closer every day. So I want to tell you what's going on at Alabama. And more specifically, I want to tell you about one specific player and just an insane story that popped up over the course of the last couple of days. So first off, if you're an Alabama fan, I do think you have to be in a little bit of panic mode, okay? Listen, I understand this time of year, and we did a short clip on Monday on the Aaron Torres Pod YouTube channel. I understand that there's roster churn at every single FBS school at this time of year. I even saw like the playoff teams of the 12 playoff teams. Notre Dame's the only one that hasn't had a player enter yet. And Marcus Freeman basically acknowledged, yeah, some guys are going to enter probably. We're just kind of waiting to see how the playoff shakes out before guys make their official decision. So everybody deals with roster churn. Everybody deals with players going in and players going out. But what you've seen at virtually every school, especially the schools that aren't in the playoff, by the way, is they may be losing guys, but they're adding guys left and right. LSU seems like they're picking up 2 or 3 commitments every day. Ole Miss, who we're going to certainly talk about, is loading up in the portal. Auburn, every single day. They add Jackson Arnold. They add whatever. Well, what's going on at Alabama right now? You know that Alabama, as of Tuesday morning, if my math is correct, Damon Payne was a defensive tackle. He entered the portal. That is now 15 players from Alabama's roster this year that have now entered the portal. And you know how many players have committed to Alabama during this portal cycle? 0. Zip 0. As Jay-Z said, stingy with De Niro. Maybe that's the problem at Alabama. They're stingy with the De Niro, okay? But I bring it up because Alabama, 15 players have entered the portal, 0 players have committed. And I'm just here to ask the simple question, is Alabama getting bullied by everybody else in the SEC? But also, here's the question. Are they getting bullied by their own players? Because we have seen just a wild story over the last probably 12 hours or so unfold as we record here at 1 Central Time in Tuscaloosa. That story involves a player by the name of Jalen Mbakwe, okay? Now, if you're not a recruiting diehard or an Alabama football diehard, you might not know the name. But Jalen Mbakwe was one of the highest rated recruits in Alabama's last recruiting cycle, not the one that just signed a few weeks ago. But in the 2024 cycle, he was rated as the number 12 overall player in America. And he was a player that is from Alabama. And on Monday, as you can see on the screen, Jalen Mbakwe officially entered the transfer portal. Where it gets interesting, and this is, again, everybody deals with transfers, but where it gets interesting is pretty straightforward. This kid does not really fit the bill of the traditional player that enters the transfer portal. He is from the state of Alabama. Okay, so it's not like he's from California or Arizona or New York or New Jersey or whatever, and he's homesick. He wants to get closer to home. He played, by the way, this year. 15 tackles, return kicks, return punts. He actually had a couple really big plays in that Georgia game when Alabama beat Georgia at home. So he played, he is from Alabama, and he decides to enter the portal. Now, what gets interesting is that right before he entered the portal, there were some very interesting reports from Alabama reporters that this could be coming and the insanity behind what could potentially be happening for a player that was projected to be a star next year, an impact player next year who's from Alabama. So I saw this on social media. Now, it's behind a paywall, but somebody posted a screenshot. So the reporter is named Charlie Potter. Charlie, I apologize. I'm not stealing your work. Somebody else posted this on Twitter. This wasn't Torres stealing your work, okay? But Charlie Potter said on Sunday night that this move could be coming. Here is what he wrote on one of the Alabama message boards. Again, I did not personally screenshot this. This was on Twitter, so don't get mad at me if you're an Alabama fan or somebody who's working for Alabama's On3 site. I'm just going off what was already online, okay? According to Charlie Potter, who is a great reporter, he said, we're hearing rumors Jalen Mbakwe is going to enter the portal. As of today, we feel it's very likely. This is where it gets interesting. He received a 7-figure offer elsewhere, so this would be a business decision. It sounds like he also wants to be guaranteed a starting job, which might not be available at Alabama next season, with Zabian Brown coming back and Damani Jackson's looming NFL draft decision. There is talk of him playing both ways too, so there is a lot at play here. The Alabama staff and NIL side are aware of the situation and understand it's a business decision. So Jalen Mbakwe, that was a report that came out on Sunday leading into Monday. He officially hits the portal. And if you thought that that is where it stopped, where the insanity, where the craziness stopped, I think again, and let me tell you why. It is because on Monday night, Alabama fans are freaking out. Everybody's trying to figure out what's going on. Then what happens? Oh, Ryan Williams, who was Alabama's best skill position player, Ryan Williams posts something on Instagram. You can see it on our Torres on Bama account. Drew, who runs our Torres on Bama account, is doing a great job just trying to piece through all this. Ryan Williams posts on Instagram. He said it's a picture of him and Jalen Mbakwe, and it says, bingo, we got action. Why do I bring it up? It is because that Instagram post sent a frenzy through the Alabama fan base, and it was really interesting because I think some people thought, does this mean Ryan Williams is entering the transfer portal? But then I saw other people that actually thought it was the opposite. Does this mean that Ryan Williams is insinuating that Jalen Mbakwe, even after entering the transfer portal, was likely to come back to Alabama? So I want to go ahead and dive in. First of all, I'll tell you this. I'll just be transparent. I did some kind of research on this. I called some people that would be in the know. The sense that I got is that it actually wasn't as NIL related as people think. It was really a decision about playing time. And more specifically, what I'm told is Jalen Mbakwe, he really does want to play both ways. He really does want to be the next Travis Hunter, wants to play on offense, wants to play on defense. And what was interesting was following the Ryan Williams post, there is a belief in a lot of circles at Alabama that Jalen Mbakwe will eventually come out of the portal and eventually return to Alabama. My assumption is with some sort of guarantee that he is going to get touches on the offensive side of the football. So that is what's going on. But I also think this conversation speaks to two very interesting things in the state of college football right now. One is Alabama. One is the bigger picture of college football. And at Alabama, I think the very simple question is, does that man on the screen, Kalen DeBoer, have a pulse of his locker room? And then I think the bigger question about college football specifically is, what the heck is even going on in this sport? So with the Kalen DeBoer stuff, you know, what comes to mind when I think about what could be happening with Kalen DeBoer at Alabama. By the way, I know I'm going to have people criticize me, so I'll just get out in front of it. I was the guy that said, don't doubt DeBoer. I was the guy that ranted and raved how great he was doing last January and February when he took the job. But I got to wonder, with all of this going on, with not only Jalen Mbakwe entering the portal, but you got his teammates Instagramming stuff, and what does that mean? And fans are going crazy and all that. I do wonder if he has the pulse of that locker room and all the questions that people asked about him being ready for the SEC. I do think they were probably fair to ask, and I do think they're fair to ask now. And when I think about what's going on in Alabama, it reminds me of the conversation that we had on last Thursday's show about Bill Belichick. If you remember, we talked Belichick, and I asked a very simple question. I said, is he going to have people that understand college football on his staff? It's not just about hiring a bunch of dudes that have evaluated people in the NFL or females that have evaluated people in the NFL. It's not about bringing a pro-style system. It is about bringing in people who understand all the moves that get made every single day behind the scenes in college football. Who are the agents? Who are the power brokers? Who are the people that are in the ear of the best players in America? And this is a perfect example of that. Is that clearly somebody is advising Jalen Mbakwe that he either needs to leave or that he's going to get more money or that he's this or that he's that or that he's whatever. And so I just bring it up because this is exactly what we talked about with Bill Belichick. It's actually what we're going to talk about with Zach Smith here in just a minute. Zach Smith coached college football. And one thing we talk about is like, man, in this world, you have to have a pulse on your locker room. Every single kid, and it's not just the head coach's responsibility, it's the position coaches, it's et cetera. But you have to have an understanding of who's actually really happy, who wants more money, who wants more playing time, who thinks that he's better than the guy in front of him, who is getting paid like he should be a starter but isn't. There's so many things you have to have a pulse on. And right now, seeing a story like this, I'll be honest, it sort of looks like Kalen DeBoer doesn't really have a great feel for what's going on in his locker room. Now, in Kalen DeBoer's defense, they do have 2 visitors on campus today. I've been told there's maybe some silent commits behind the scenes that I'm not privy to share right now out of respect to those players. But also, it does not look good for Kalen DeBoer. I do think the bigger picture, and this is a conversation that's happening everywhere across college football. College football is in a crazy place right now, okay? And, I think about the fact that Kalen DeBoer is a guy making $8-9 million a year. And on Monday night, you know what he was doing? This is not a Kalen DeBoer insult. It's just a fact. He's putting out fires on social media. He's trying to renegotiate with this kid and his agent. And I know he's not doing it. The collective is. But, he's trying to figure out, okay, what does this kid want? Are we going to get him back? How does it happen? What do we need to do? All of that. And then on top of it, he's supposed to be preparing for a bowl game. He's supposed to be evaluating players for his own team in the portal. And it just speaks to how crazy college football is right now. I saw Ross Dellinger put out a report on Tuesday morning where he just basically said, look at the state of things right now. You have coaches literally giving back money to help fund NIL. Now, I think part of it is the coaches are Mike Norvell, worst season pretty much in program history. Oklahoma State, pretty much worst season under Mike Gundy. Brian Kelly, disappointing season at LSU. So I think a lot of the guys that are giving back money transparently are kind of like, I don't really have a choice because I ain't going to be able to raise money. But we have revenue sharing coming. Everybody's trying to figure out, how does revenue sharing work? How much money do we need? What's sustainable? What can we even take from our boosters? Because the NCAA is trying to limit booster interaction when boosters have basically been running things for the last couple years. So I just bring it up because this whole story speaks to the craziness of college football right now in 2024. And I was talking to somebody about this on Monday. I think it's worth noting why it feels crazier now. One, it just is. But 2, I think this is really kind of the first wave of players that kind of came up in high school with NIL. Remember, think about this. Remember that famous 2022 recruiting class at Texas A&M? All those guys are juniors right now going into their senior year. So if it was crazy back then, imagine all these guys now that were freshmen in college or seniors in high school or juniors in high school, knowing NIL was going to be a factor in their recruitment. So these guys kind of, I believe, have an understanding of the value not only that they have, but also the power that they have over schools, over collectives, over players, whatever. So I bring it up. We're going to keep you updated on this Jalen Mbakwe story. I still think there's actually a pretty good chance that he returns to Alabama, but it just shows you how freaking crazy the world of college football is right now. All right, I'll tell you what, producer Matt, let's go ahead and take a quick break. We're going to come back. When we come back, there is another portal story that we got to get to because it is freaking crazy. Tampering. It's going wild, and I think we saw the most extreme example of tampering in real time that we've maybe ever seen. It was on Monday night. I got all the details. We're also Adam Schefter, crazy report on Sacramento State. What's true, what's not. We'll come back, talk about that. Also welcome in Zach Smith from Menace to Sports. Quick break. Be right back. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute, but before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what, do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, The Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. Mora Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era, new rules shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions. All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So do want to switch gears in just a moment to our some interesting tampering stuff, but we've got some comments in the comment section. First of all, Auburn fans have found the chat. So shout out to all the Auburn fans that are, dancing circles on Kayla DeBoer's grave. I think it's a little early for that. But I do want to get to one comment I thought was actually very interesting and certainly indicative of what I think a lot of people think right now with what's going on at Alabama. Producer Matt, pop it up. So Joe Smith says, Bama being stingy with De Niro is hilarious. So that was an old Jay-Z line, zip zero, stingy with De Niro. Okay, that was, I was talking about Alabama having 0 players in the portal. But he says, having lived in Alabama my entire life, it is widely known that the perks for players were endless. They are having issues with an equal playing field. So, Joe, I'll say this. You bring up the conversation that I think everybody's just kind of outwardly having in college football right now, which is, was Alabama doing some stuff behind the scenes back in the day that maybe other schools weren't doing? And now is there an equal playing field? What I would say is, first of all, I'm not going to incriminate anybody, okay? But what I do think there are two interesting things at play here. One, I do think that when Nick Saban was there, I do think there was an ability from Alabama to, in my opinion, kind of, I don't know what the right term is, but basically get players on the cheap, if you will. Maybe not have to pay a premium for a 5-star and basically say, hey, come play for Nick Saban. If you do what he says, you're going to play in the NFL in 3 years. And I think early in NIL, Alabama was able to sell that. And I think especially once you got players in the program and they were playing, you were able to retain those guys. Because at the end of the day, we could talk about NIL this, NIL that. These guys all want to get to the pros, especially a player that's good enough to play at Alabama. 2, and I think this is an important thing. This is something I've heard for probably about 2 years now. Now that it is a quote unquote equal playing field, now that everybody is paying players, and I'm not Alabama fans, I'm not insinuating that you were paying players before. All I am saying is that what I have been told pretty consistently is that Alabama, frankly, just financially, there just isn't the volume of boosters and big name people that can continue to spend at Alabama like there are at other schools. So, listen, we don't have to name every name. And listen, I'm not saying Alabama's poverty here, okay? All I'm saying is that, to run a school at the highest level, to run an athletic department at the highest level in this NIL era, you need a lot of boosters who are willing to give money. And here's the thing. They have to give money year over year over year. It's not just you write a check for $1 million, which is something I wish I was fortunate enough to be able to do. You have to, you write a check for $1 million. Well, guess what? Now it's basketball season. Now in some schools it's baseball season. Now you got to do it for next year. Now we need that facility upgrade. And so, at a place like Texas, which has, hundreds of thousands of living alums, Ohio State, hundreds of thousands of living alums. Penn State, I think, has quietly done a really good job at NIL, more so retaining really good players. But I just don't know that Alabama has the volume of boosters to really, to spend at the highest level. I mean, listen, the kid we were just talking about a minute ago, Jalen Mbakwe, that's a kid that like $1 million. If the reports are true, and I have no reason to not believe that Charlie Potter, the reporter from Alabama, is not telling the truth. And again, didn't take stuff from behind a paywall. I just want that out there. But like, if that's true, like think about that. $1 million, 7 figures for a guy that's not going to start. Like Alabama can't afford that. I don't know if anybody can afford that, except maybe Sac State. We'll talk about that in a minute. But I think it's a great comment by Joe. I think it's a very interesting time. And I do think when you look at the schools, in my opinion, in the SEC that just have the most money to burn in this NIL era, I wouldn't put Alabama at number one. Again, Texas A&M, Arkansas. We know about the Tyson money and the Walmart money, etc. Crazy new world. And I do think Alabama is a little bit behind. And I think for a few years there in the early NIL era, they were able to take advantage of kind of like that Nick Saban discount of come here. And we'll be able to make sure that you get paid in a way, you'll be able to get paid on the back end more so than the front end. With that said, let's go ahead and switch gears. Okay. So it is portal season. We did just talk Jalen Mbakwe. By the way, do your boy Torres a solid. We do, I think, cover the portal as well as anybody. CFB Transfers on Twitter, CFB Transfers on Instagram. Do me a quick favor. Make sure to follow both of those pages. All your late breaking news. I have some people that help me with it. I'm not doing it all by myself. But I want to talk now about a story that I kind of put 2 and 2 together because of our CFB Transfers portal page, okay? And it involves a player named Kawan Lacey. And I'll be transparent. Kawan Lacey, to quote the Shaq meme, I was not familiar with your game, okay? But he is a former 4-star running back from the 2024 recruiting class, a player that, I knew the name but didn't know much about. Commits to Missouri, and on Monday, and I actually went back and looked at the timestamps, at 10 a.m. Eastern, 7 Pacific, Hayes Fawcett, who does an unbelievable job on the portal, puts out a graphic. Kawan Lacey, 4-star recruit, class of 2024, has announced he will transfer from Missouri. Well, why do I bring it up? It is because, as you can see on the screen, it was literally 12 hours later. It was 12 hours later that Kawan Lacey, who entered the portal at 10 a.m. Eastern time on Monday, and I think it was 10:09 Pacific, decided to commit to Ole Miss. He had the graphic made. He was ready to go, all of that good stuff. And so this was just such a light bulb moment for me. And listen, we all know that tampering happens, right? But this kid, Kawan Lacey, I'm not blaming him. He's just a kid. He's whatever. But I think, it's funny. I was thinking about remember the line from the movie My Cousin Vinny? And they're talking about, he's in court, he's this, he's that. And he drops the line like, do the laws of physics cease to exist on your stove? Well, I bring it up because apparently the laws of the transfer portal cease to exist in Kawan Lacey's world. 10 a.m., he's in the portal. By 10 p.m., he's gone through the entire recruitment, seen everything he's got to see, do everything he's got to do, and he's committing to Ole Miss, okay? And so I bring it up because I put out a tweet. You can put it up, producer Matt. I appreciate you having it ready. Where basically I just said and I don't even really care, but I just said, this kid literally got in the portal less than 12 hours ago. Now, it was actually a little bit more than 12 hours ago, but that's neither here nor there. This kid literally got in the portal less than 12 hours ago. Glad to see tampering doesn't exist in college sports. Wink, wink, nod, nod. Yeah. I think there might have been some tampering going on here, okay? And so, first of all, I put that out. As you can imagine, Ole Miss fans were not happy with me. And they brought up a few, relevant points. Like, one, this kid committed to Missouri over Ole Miss last year. So there was clearly a relationship with the kid, with the school, with the this, with the that. So I get it. I'm not even mad about it. What I am going to say is you can't deny that tampering is happening, and you can't deny that this, in my opinion, is probably the most egregious example yet of just blatant tampering. And listen, we're going to get into it because I don't know that there's anything that anybody can be done, and I don't even blame the school. But if you can't see the obvious tampering that just went on, I don't know what to tell you. Now, a couple quick thoughts. First of all, again, this kid, I feel bad. I'm talking about him. I don't know him. I'm sure he's a good kid. I have no ill will with him. But one thing I will tell you, if I was his agent, if I was his parent, my advice would have been pretty straightforward. And my advice for any parent who has a kid that might enter the portal here in the next few weeks or the next few years or whatever, just do yourself a solid. Even if you know where you want to go, even if you know your spot is going to be taken if you don't commit, you can silently commit without publicly acknowledging it. And so just silently commit, do the whole song and dance, wait at least 24 hours, because that's the thing. It's not that players all the time don't enter the portal knowing where they want to go or having a leader or having previous communication. It's that it just looked so bad. You enter the portal at 10 a.m., you exit at 10 p.m., and it just did not look good for the kid. It did not look good for Ole Miss, and that would be my piece of advice. Don't do it. Now, to the point that Ole Miss fans will defend, and I think they're right. One, tampering obviously happens everywhere, okay? And tampering happens, and not even necessarily in the way I think most people think, but I think we're now educated enough as a college football, college basketball community to understand how tampering really works. As I said a minute ago, all these players have agents. As I said a minute ago, all these players have representation. As I've said a minute ago, all these players have somebody who helps them out behind the scenes. Very rarely in this world, unless it's like a D3 kid or whatever, is a kid fielding the phone calls himself, or at least not having somebody, especially for a player like this who did not play very much at Missouri. Behind the scenes, I'm sure he probably knew 6-8 weeks ago, hey, I'm going to eventually enter the portal, okay? And so I don't blame the kid, but as I said, there are people working behind the scenes, and the way this whole thing really works is Lane Kiffin, I don't think, and I'm not, Lane Kiffin might see this video, he might get mad, might tweet at me, but I don't think Lane Kiffin has the time to slide into the kids' DMs. I think what ends up happening is you have all these huge player personnel staffs. You have whoever just talking to agents, talking to people, talking to whoever. Oh, hey, you represent so-and-so. Oh, or hey, you're just talking and oh, hey, coach, just by the way, I want you to know so-and-so probably going to enter the portal, not very happy. I mean, that's the job of these player personnel staffs. So one, everybody's just talking to everybody, and it's not even necessarily tampering to just say, hey, we recruited so-and-so. How's he doing? Is he doing okay? Is he having a good time? Whatever. That's the relationship building that comes in college football. But two, it happens everywhere. And I think that to me is why, even though it's a funny story, and even though I would advise the next kid to not commit the same day he enters the portal, I do think it's probably worth noting, like, it does happen everywhere. And that's, by the way, because people ask me all the time, Torres, how do we stop tampering? And the issue is, I don't really know that anybody really wants tampering to stop, right? Because here's the thing, like, yeah, you might get pissed if your star player enters the portal and 12 hours later he commits somewhere. But guess what? At some point, someone is going to commit to your school that somebody on your staff may have had a pretty good idea that they were going to enter the portal in previously, okay? And so I bring it up because all of these portal rules right now, like, everybody wants to complain about everything. The issue is they only want to complain when it hurts them and never when it helps them. It's true with tampering. It's true, by the way, like you saw the story with Bo Perbula, the Penn State quarterback who the backup who decides to enter the portal before Penn State's playoff game. And James Franklin is freaking out. Oh my goodness, this isn't fair to the kid, this and that. And it's like, yeah, well, James Franklin, guess what? If you were 4-8 and you didn't have a quarterback on your roster, you wouldn't have a problem with the situation, but you're on the wrong side of it. And so I feel the same way about tampering, is that if you're a Missouri fan, it freaking sucks today. But guess what? There's somebody committing to Missouri, and I'm not trying to point fingers. That's basically just like, you know what? Guess what? Missouri, I talked to somebody from Missouri, or my agent talked to somebody from Missouri 6-8 weeks ago. They knew I was entering the portal back in October, late October, early November. So that is why, because this is one of the top questions I get, especially this time of year, especially in April during portal season, is like, Torres, how do we stop this? I don't think we stop it, because I don't think anybody wants it stopped. Because if you stop the tampering, then guess what? It's not only going to hurt the players that leave your program. In other words, it's not only going to hurt the school that is recruiting your guys, it's going to hurt your program because you quietly behind the scenes are tampering as well. So it is an ongoing issue. It is certainly fascinating. And I don't think there's really a quick fix to it. I just think it is what it is. I think certainly as we evolve in college sports, there will probably be something resembling a professional contract. If that happens, I think that probably changes things. But for right now, I just don't know what you can do if you lose a player to the portal and 12 hours later he commits to Ole Miss. All right, so really quickly, I just want to talk about one more quick topic. We're going to get to Zach Smith, host of the Menace to Sports podcast. He does an awesome job. Zach's a freaking beast. I've known Zach for a long time. He was a former assistant coach at Ohio State, Florida, etc. Okay, want to hit on one more topic. This one was very interesting to me. And it wasn't interesting necessarily for the reason that people think. Because on what day was it? It was Monday. Adam Schefter puts out a report. Producer Matt, do you have the tweet from Adam Schefter? Because this was just fascinating. So this was from Adam Schefter on Monday. Sacramento State is in discussions to hire former Pro Bowl quarterback Michael Vick as its new head coach, per sources. Sacramento State plans to move up to FBS, is building a new stadium, and has over $50 million in NIL. Sacramento State would build an experienced coaching staff around Vick that is in line with the new frontier of college football. So this story certainly made waves. Now, there's a couple caveats to that. One, first of all, there was a report also on Monday that Michael Vick had interviewed for Norfolk State, which I believe is an HBCU. If it's not, I apologize, but I know it's an FCS school, not far from where he grew up. He grew up in Newport News, Virginia. Norfolk State, of course, is in Virginia as well. Two, it was also interesting because the second that, first of all, let me even backtrack, okay? So I think the big reaction nationally, there were a lot of people talking about Michael Vick as a college head coach. I think it's easy for everybody to say, I want the next Coach Prime. I want the next Deion Sanders. I think it's a lot harder to find him. Remember, Coach Prime was coaching at the high school level before he got to Jackson. He had 3 years at Jackson State. His final 2 years at Jackson State, he goes 23-3. And so what I would say about Michael Vick is the same thing I'd say about Bill Belichick, is that I just think until you've been in the fire for a few years, you just don't know what you're getting into in college football, even with an experienced staff. I keep saying it. I keep hammering it home. We're going to talk about it with Zach Smith in just a moment. But college football coaches, right now, the last thing they focus on is football. It's fundraising. It's recruiting. It's re-recruiting your roster, whatever. By the way, because I've seen a lot of this, I understand that Michael Vick, has not a great past. This is a conversation that we have had many times on this show because I use Michael Vick as an example all the time. I don't really care about what happened, and it's not because I'm not a dog lover. My little princess is literally laying 5 feet from me as we speak right now. But I bring it up because we talk about this all the time. I always use Michael Vick as an example of, I believe that if you do anything wrong, and you seek retribution and you get retribution, it shouldn't be a death sentence for your entire career, right? Like Bobby Petrino rides a motorcycle into a ditch with his mistress on it. Listen, it was interesting at the time. He had to, seek retribution with his family, with his inner circle. He did. He shouldn't never be allowed to work in football again. And I know I'm comparing apples and oranges, but it's the same with Michael Vick. And I say it all the time because my mom is a dog lover. My mom is a dog activist. She listens to this show all the time. And every time I use this example, she gets mad at me and usually texts me the day after. She listens more on podcasts than the show. But I bring it up because, I always say is Michael Vick served his time. Michael Vick deserves the opportunity to seek employment. So I have no issue if Sacramento State or Norfolk State wants to hire him. But what I will say, the part that I found interesting, producer Matt, you could pop up the Adam Schefter tweet again. Because what I found interesting was the part that I think if you cover college sports, I think you found this part more interesting, which is that Sacramento State plans to move up to FBS. That's not interesting. That's been reported. Is building a new stadium. And this was the part. Has over $50 million in NIL. And that to me was the immediate red flag. Now, my buddy Doug Gottlieb kind of tweeted at Adam Schefter, and Adam Schefter made a comment about his basketball team. I'm not going to get into Schefter versus Gottlieb. I'm team Gottlieb because, I love Doug. I've worked with Doug. I've known Doug for years. But here's the thing. Doug has also got it right. I saw other people that cover college sports like, listen, Schefter, you're the best in the biz, but there ain't no school in America that's got $50 million in NIL just sitting around, okay, let alone Sac State, okay? Ohio State doesn't have $50 million sitting around. Tennessee, Texas A&M, Texas, Arkansas, nobody has $50 million sitting around. And so I just bring it up. I know there was some kind of conversation about like, is it $50 million over 10 years? Is it $50 million over 5 years? Is it whatever? What I could tell you is I actually kind of sort of know the Sac State layout. I know people that work in that athletic department. Right now they have like no NIL. Now, I'm not saying they haven't raised money contingent on them going to the FBS, but I don't think it changes the fact that, in my opinion, I think the idea that they have $50 million in NIL feels preposterous to me. And I try not to criticize other media members. I think everybody's working hard. Schefter certainly works harder than pretty much anybody in the business, on that phone 24/7. I don't envy his job, even with all the fame and success he's had. But he's got to clean up those sources because ain't nobody got 50 million in NIL, let alone Sac State. So Michael Vick, we'll see what happens. I think there's some holes to this story. I think it's an interesting story, but I do think there are some holes. But just wanted to quickly touch on that because I had a few people send me that, thought it was very interesting. Really quickly, let's see. Producer Matt, the comments section is on fire. Before we get to Zach Smith, who does a great job, do we have anything interesting in the comment section? I'm trying to look quickly as well. Got some comments about the U.S. president. We probably don't need to get into. How about what JTL said, producer Matt? How about what JTL said? I can pop it up really quick. This one. Auburn will be the best team in Alabama, and I'm not even a fan. Producer Matt, did you sneak into the comments and did not tell me? I'll tell you, listen, we talked a lot about Auburn over the course of the season. Auburn, it's worth noting. What was the final tally, Matt? 8 of the top 10 prospects in Alabama, correct? Committed to Auburn? So 8 of the top 10 prospects in Alabama committed to Auburn. So you could criticize Hugh Freeze for whatever, but since Kalen DeBoer got there, Hugh Freeze has kind of locked down the state of Alabama. Now, Kalen DeBoer had the higher overall class. They recruited nationally. They had 5-6 kids from the state of California. Listen, I've said it a million times. We've had Hugh Freeze on this show. I happen to like Hugh Freeze. I have no issues with him, with his past. We were just talking about Michael Vick, etc. I don't think they're that far off. They went 5-7 this year, beat A&M. They led Missouri going into the fourth quarter, lost that game. They led Oklahoma by double digits in the fourth quarter, lost that game. Hugh Freeze said it. He's like, if we just find a quarterback that doesn't throw the football to the other team, we're going to be okay. They probably win 3 to 4 more games if they just take better care of the football. So I only bring it up. I don't think they're that far off. I told you on Sunday's show, I am a Jackson Arnold truther, okay? I am a believer in Jackson Arnold. I think he got a raw deal because the O-line stunk and all his wide receivers were hurt. But I just bring it up to very simply say that I think there's a very good chance that Auburn is improved. I don't know if they'll be better than Alabama. As producer Matt mentions in the comment section, number 3 transfer class right now, Auburn. 24/7 Sports has them ranked number 3. Yeah, because of Jackson Arnold, a Torres guy. I'm a Jackson Arnold truther. I'm also a Darrell Robinson truther. If you missed that show earlier in the week, Darrell Robinson, UConn's second leading rusher, tied for the lead in rushing touchdowns at 7. He has committed to Auburn. By the way, as I mentioned, CFB transfers on Twitter, CFB transfers on Instagram as well. All right, I'll tell you what, that's what we're going to do. We're going to take one last break. When we come back, I do want to bring in my buddy, Zach Smith. Zach Smith hosts the Menace to Sports podcast. He is a former Ohio State assistant coach, a former Florida assistant coach. He worked under Urban Meyer. And I thought he was the perfect interview for this week because we're going to talk a little bit about Bill Belichick. What is he actually in for in college football? But more importantly, Ohio State. Zach lives in Columbus. What is the state of the program? What is the state of the fan base at this exact moment in time? Quick break. Be right back. When we come back, Zach Smith, Menace to Sports. All right, we're going to get back to the show in a minute. But before we do, many of you ask me all the time, Torres, what can I do to help support the show? You give me hours and hours and hours of content every single week. What can I do to help you? Well, I'll tell you what. Do me a quick favor. Check out the Aaron Torres Media merchandise store for all of your team-specific shirts, hats, and more, all available at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. A lot of you wondering, Torres, what can I get in that merch store? Well, first of all, we got our brand new Hope and Pope Kentucky basketball t-shirts. That's right. Mark Pope has arrived. He is here to save the day. Get your Hope and Pope t-shirts there. Also, Arkansas fans, the Big Pig Invasion is here. You can get your tees there. Basketball School Alabama shirts. More Hurley 2024 UConn shirts for your tailgates at Rentschler Field, your games at the XL Center or Gamble. And oh, by the way, your Mike effing Woodson gear for Indiana. If you love football, we got you covered too. We got more Dion shirts and hats than we even know what to do with. The freeze warning has hit the plains. Auburn fans, grab your freeze warning tees now. And of course, our new era new rule shirt applies to Nebraska football and its incredible fan base. We have more coming for the fall, plenty in stock right now. So make sure to check out the Aaron Torres Media merch store at aarontorresonline.com/merchandise. And you can always hit me up with any questions. Aaron Torres Podcast Questions. All right, joining me via Zoom. Got to say, man, it's been a minute, but he is, without a doubt, one of my favorite college football voices, host of Menace to Sports, Monday through Friday, noon Eastern, former assistant Ohio State, Florida, etc. Zach Smith, man, what's going on? How you doing, bro?
I'm great, man. It's good to be here with you talking college football.
Well, listen, I told you, for people watching on YouTube, you can see the liquor cabinet in the background. Poor Ryan Day is driving half the state of Ohio to that liquor cabinet right now. So want to get to Ryan Day in a second. Let me ask you this, though. I do, and I think you'd be the perfect person to talk about just the state of college football and the biggest story in college football. First of all, by the way, everything going good, show going good. You and Chris Drew kill it, man. Everything going good in your world besides the whole Ohio State situation?
Yeah, it's a beautiful thing, right? Ohio State has an embarrassing loss to Michigan, and the show does really well because of it. So it's like, it's always a silver lining, but everything's great.
I was told by a buddy once, he said, when you're doing anything, but especially local stuff, either want the team to be really good or really bad or something bad, because it's like that, if you're just 7-5 every year, probably not very fun to cover, Michigan State right now or Rutgers or whatever, but Ohio State 10-2, we'll get to them in a minute. Okay. So the big question, I want to talk to you Ohio State, but what I actually want to talk to you about, where I want to start, is the Belichick stuff. Okay. So, it broke really like 10 days ago that he's talking, and I don't know what your perspective was. I thought it was a total sham to kind of just get interest in the NFL. And, you could really see last Monday, Tuesday, okay, there might be something here. I have had a ton of thoughts, and I've shared all of them on what I think of Bill Belichick as a college head coach. Just curious for your perspective, and I want to dive in a minute into the nuance of what it actually means to be a college football coach in 2024. But first of all, what was your kind of, mental cycle of you see the reports and then obviously take it from there?
Yeah, I'm like you. When it first came out, I was like, stop it. Like Bill Belichick in college, especially the North Carolina job of all jobs, no shot. But then as it started to grow legs, you're like, this would be a really interesting thing, because here's the greatest NFL coach of all time. He obviously has that blueprint down, and we're in a day and age in college football where we mimic the NFL more than we ever have. And so if anybody can get into player personnel, free agency, or the transfer portal, I mean, recruiting is going to handle itself, mostly NIL driven, and his name alone is going to garner recruits' interest. So it really started to make sense. And now I think the biggest thing that I question, I know he's going to have the organization running, tip top shape. Like everything's going to be cooking with grease. My only question, I always wonder this with NFL guys when they come to college football, even if it's a position coach that comes down to coordinate, it's like, it's a very different game with a very different subject. I mean, you're dealing with 18-year-olds, like kids, and you have to teach them football. And the process from taking a kid from a high school 18-year-old to a college football understanding is unique. It's not like drafting a kid and teaching them and having all day long, 7 days a week, as much as you want. You could just teach them NFL football. This is a very different landscape. And I just wonder how he's going to adapt what they do offensively and defensively and implement it, teach it. And that's kind of the only question I have left. I think the rest of it, fundraising, what UNC boosters not donating to North Carolina football right now? I think everything else is going to handle itself.
So let me ask you, I don't know if you ever coached in the league, but I know you certainly, if you didn't, you have plenty of people that like, what is the difference between coaching an 18-year-old Michael Thomas, a guy that you worked with, whoever, versus a 24-year-old Michael Thomas when he kind of is more of an established dude?
Yeah, I mean, well, they come in obviously with a better understanding, just a better foundation. I mean, even, some programs like Mike Leach programs, rest in peace to the GOAT, those receivers and those quarterbacks, when they go to the NFL, you got to really reshape how they think, because he has such a unique.
You can swear. Okay.
perspective and philosophy in how he does offensive football. But for the most part, you get a kid from Bama, you get a kid from Georgia, you get a kid from Ohio State, like that kid has a really strong foundation. So now it's just kind of terminology and showing them the differences, like from the game in NFL to college, just how fast defenders are, how fast windows close, how much anticipation and timing you need to complete the football, throwing it. But it's a different game. And the other side of it is a lot of these guys, I mean, you think about guys that are 4 or 5 year vets. I mean, you're talking about almost 30 years old, wives, like they manage their own finances. Like, they're just grownups. When you get an 18-year-old kid, he doesn't know what to do. His parents aren't there to tell him he has a curfew, like hot chicks running around everywhere. Like it's much harder to get a teenager to kind of lock in and learn than it is a 23-year-old that's, focused. Also money. Now that's here in college football, but more so in the NFL. Like they're focused on their job and committing to learning because they know that second contract's coming up.
Well, and that to me, I think that's the number one thing. And I want to talk about the recruiting stuff in a minute, but I do think the re-recruiting process is something I don't think, and I've never lived it. And to a degree, I don't know how much you did because there wasn't this crazy portal situation when you were coaching, but and I was trying to explain this. It's not even just like, oh, it's all about money. It's all about this. It's all about that. But every guy that's in the business now that I talk to, it's just having a pulse of literally all 85 guys on your team. And by the way, it's not just the head coach's job, position coaches, whatever, but it's like, it's not just, I'm going to transfer for more money. It could be more money. It could be more playing time. It could be sick away from home. It could be, I think I'm better than the dude in front of me and I'm not going to get, there's just a million situations. And I do think like that to me, that's one of the two things. That's one, and I want to get your opinion on the other. But the re-recruiting process of, again, it's not, everyone makes it sound like it's always a player thing and all these players are terrible and they're all about money. But it's just about like having a pulse on all 85 dudes in that locker room, where they stand, who's happy, who's not happy because of what reason. And I just think, and again, I've never personally lived it, but I feel like that's something that is so time consuming that until you live it every day, you don't understand.
Yeah, there's no question. I mean, recruiting in and of itself was so time consuming, but now, like you said, you're recruiting your roster. Like it used to be when I coached, and it was I think I've been out of the game for 6 years. Once you got them, once they signed, once they came on campus, I mean, notoriously every year you can ask anyone that played for me, my freshmen hated me, hated me because I was hard on them and they'd never been used to that. They're all prima donna 5-star, this, that, and the other. They're not used to someone being hard on them. And so, and every single one, they would have to get almost counseling from the older players. And they'd be like, dude, I was the same way, but I'm telling you, if you listen, you're going to get better and you're going to love this dude. And it's just, you can't do that anymore because all those freshmen would have left. They'd have been like, screw this guy. He's a jerk. I'm out of here. So it's got to be sun up to sundown. And it also has kind of transformed coaches to an extent. I mean, it's not that you're not being as demanding, but the coaching styles had to adjust, right? Because if Urban Meyer walked into the building and started coaching a team the way he coached it back in 2012, the whole team is transferring. Every single one of them.
Sure.
You just can't coach like that anymore. And I think more than anything, we see the byproduct of that on the field. I mean, I had a former player that came back in town for the Indiana game, went over to the facility, was, checking it out, Philly Brown is his name, played in the Super Bowl, really good college player, played in the NFL, started in the NFL. He went back and he called me right after. He was like, dude, they said Ryan Day doesn't yell at the team.
Wow.
I was like, what? He was like, no, dude, he doesn't, like he gets animated, but he doesn't ever like brazenly yell at the team. I'm like, oh my.
And when you say the team, you mean individuals or like the team itself?
Both. I mean, in team meetings, everything's very NFL approach, very calculated. Like, listen, this is not good enough. We have to do this better. We have to, and just, whereas Urban would have broke six vases and windows. And it's a different age of college football. Now, I still think that Kirby Smart is doing that. Like, I don't think he's toned it back much, but so it's possible. It just has to be very calculated and respectful.
The last thing on Belichick, we'll get to some Ohio State stuff, is just the recruiting in general. And I say this now, we're in the middle of this portal cycle, but it's another thing that I think until you're in it for a year, you can't fully understand. And one, it's the cycles of it all. It's the portal. It's looking at 26s, 27s, the high school, junior, sophomores, et cetera. But it's also the your word doesn't really mean anything, right? I mean, how many kids are in the portal right now? And, oh, yeah, coach, because I've talked to coaches like literally in the last month that are like, yeah, we had a kid committed on a Tuesday. Wednesday, I woke up and there was a graphic and he was not coming to play for us. It's so like, I'm just curious, like, you've probably heard stories way better than the stories that I've heard, but like, by the way, do you have any stories? You don't have to name names or schools, but there's got to be stories like that where, again, this isn't the NFL. There's no players association. There's no contract that you sign that is legally binding until you actually get to campus. That's another thing that I think is just more complicated than people realize.
It is. And it's, I mean, the biggest problem, I think, that at least the Blue Bloods, the Ohio States and Georgias are facing is they're losing kids to schools they would have never lost kids to without NIL. And it comes to a point where you say, all right, an offensive guard. Like, how much is let me just look at the NFL salaries. Like, how much is an offensive guard worth? Well, some of these schools like Miami, who are just dying to be back, they're going to overspend like crazy. Well, Ohio State can't do that, because they have a bunch of other 4-star guys that are going to be like, wait, how much did he get? Now I want that. And so all of a sudden their budget would balloon to an impossible to pay amount. So, I mean, and you also have situations like Ohio State had a running back committed. I mean, been committed for over a year. There was no question he was coming. He was in love with it, wanted to be a Buckeye. And then at the last week, Miami didn't have a running back, and John Ruiz just opened his checkbook and the kid flipped to Miami. Didn't even like Miami. Had no desire to go be a Hurricane. But if the dollar amount's right, if it's life-changing for your mom, I'll be a Hurricane. Like, what's it matter? And and the other side of it is just to begin the recruiting process now, because we've been through a couple cycles, these recruits are coming up knowing NIL is a thing, right? Knowing how it works. Older players, what they got. And so that they'll open the discussion with like, listen, if this is a starting point just to get to the table, and you have a coach at Georgia sitting there like, well, Kirby's never going to let me pay you that. So we can't even enter the chat. We can't even start the recruiting process because we're not going to be able to match that. It's just a wild
now sub Kirby Smart for Bill Belichick. And it's like, I'm not rooting against it. And I don't want to be that elitist college guy that's like, oh, the pro guy does, but it's like, it is a different world. So you mentioned Ryan Day. Let's talk about our guy a little bit. Now, listen, I know you have a personal relationship, whatever, but let me ask you this. So we're recording here on a Monday. Game day is Saturday against Tennessee. Like, what is the vibe in Columbus right now about the team and the game? We know what it was 3-4 weeks ago after the Michigan game, but what is it like now?
Yeah. I mean, I think they're trying to do a good job with messaging, and you can see it in the media availability. I mean, the AD just sat down with a couple beat writers. Ryan Day just had his weekly show. Even the players, you can see that the theme behind closed doors is this was the goal all year, was to be in the college football playoffs. We are here. Now it's time to go try to win this thing, kind of ignoring the elephant in the room that everyone knows happened. And I mean, it's rubbing fans the wrong way, because it's like, whoa. That is not the only goal here, to make the 12-team playoff. Like, watch your mouth. But to the team, who cares what the fans think? As long as the team has singular focus on Tennessee and trying to make a run at this thing, I think they're doing a good job getting the players on that track, that mindset. And I really feel that 2022 buzz here. Back in 2022, when Ohio State lost to Michigan but made the playoffs, they responded like crazy against Georgia. It's the best game they played all year. Came a shanked field goal short of what would have won them the national championship, and it just looked like a completely different team from the team that played Michigan. And I think that it feels that way around Columbus right now. Like, that's what we're going to get, like a maximized version of this team, which is only going to piss fans off more that they lost to Michigan.
Well, and it's funny because I was actually thinking about that Georgia game this week, is that it does feel like there haven't been very many situations where like Ryan Day's team at Ohio State is not expected to win, or nobody really gives them a chance, and they do generally play pretty well, including, by the way, that Penn State game this year, where it was like, oh, the whole O-line's banged up. What are they going to do? And it's like, they ran the shit out of the ball is what they did.
Right.
What was I going to ask? What do you think the crowd's going to be like? One, not there's, people think that there's going to be a lot of Tennessee fans, but like Herb Street famously said on the selection show, if you will, like, hey, it might have been better for Ohio State to go on the road, get away from things. Do you think that's going to be like, if it's 6-3 at the half, Tennessee's up and nobody's, you can't move the football? Well, what's that crowd going to be like?
Oh, it's going to be brutal. I mean, I think Herb Street was right. I don't know why Buckeye fans took that as a shot to Buckeye Nation. I mean, it's just the reality. Like with the miserable offensive performance against Michigan, if they come out and struggle in that first half, the crowd is going to boo like crazy. And I think going on the road would have been a beneficial thing. I also think that Gene Smith famously, at least around here, said last year that they would look into possibly a home playoff game, moving it to Indy, to a dome. And they're not doing that, obviously, but that was discussed that they would potentially do that because of the weather. And I think it's hilarious up here because, for years, people in the Midwest have said, I'd love to see an SEC team come up to this weather and have to try to win in the snow. And they messed around and found out. They got Tennessee, who's the best built SEC team for the snow that there is in the country this year. Like top 5 defense, one of the best running backs in the country, great run game. And Ryan Day, after the Michigan game, said we didn't feel like we could throw it because it was windy. It's like, buddy, that was like the weather's going to hurt the Buckeyes more than the Volunteers. So I think fans are apprehensive with a little bit of optimism, but let a couple 3-and-outs happen, and it's going to turn on them.
I don't want to be negative, but you do have a better pulse of this team and organization, not organization, but the program and the city and everything involving Ohio State than pretty much anybody in the media. So I know that like after the Michigan game, I kind of, asked around, and I think there was a sentiment around Ohio State of like kind of what you said. Let's just get to the playoffs. Let's see what happens, whatever. But there was also like, if we freaking lose in round 1, it's good. Like, do you think something would happen if Ohio State loses in round 1? And let's assume it's not something crazy. You're not losing 41-3. You're losing a game against another good team from the SEC. But there is also a $20 million roster. There is a coaching staff that's, I would assume, as highly paid as anybody in college football. Do you think something would happen major? Like let's be honest. Would there be a coaching change, do you think, if you lose an opening round?
I don't think there will be, just because of the finances behind it. I mean, we're adding revenue sharing in July. That's a huge expense coming on the books in 2025. And so now you have to fire Ryan Day, pay him his buyout, hire a coach, presumably probably have to pay his buyout to get him to come to Columbus and get out of his what contract he's under, plus paying the play. I mean, it's just so much money. And I know Ohio State's got a lot of it, but at some point you say, all right, and then the chance that guy is not better than Ryan Day. I think they're really having those conversations and those thoughts. And Ross Bjork has come out and supported Ryan several times, which I know a lot of times is a kiss of death. It means you're getting fired, but I don't think they do anything. I know the fans are going to be loud, and boosters might be loud, but it's ultimately Ross Bjork's going to look at these boosters and say, all right, guys, it's going to cost over $100 million. We ponying up? Nope. Didn't think so. So sit down.
Well, and I think it's interesting too, like, because I heard this after the Michigan loss this year of like, well, you can't really do it because you got to wait till after the playoff. And what if, and it's like, that's going to be an Ohio State problem every year. And by the way, it's a good problem to have. Ohio State is never not making the 12-team playoff. But if it ever gets to the point where you feel like you have to make a change, I don't know that it gets easier. Let's wrap a couple quick ones because I know you're a busy man. Again, Menace to Sports, dude. I love the show. You guys do awesome work. Any other games this weekend, like super intriguing to you outside Ohio State, Penn State, or Ohio State, Tennessee, as far as this weekend that you're most excited about?
I mean, I think that's the biggest one. Yeah. I mean, I think they're all going to be good games. I mean, we got 3 cold weather games that it'll be interesting to see because I'm a Notre Dame hater, like admittedly, because I hate the fact that they're so presumptuous. They're not in a conference and all this other stuff. And they've been fraudulent. Anytime we've seen them on a big stage and they get to face off with an in-state Indiana team who I'm like, couldn't be more impressed with anyone than Kurt Signetti. I mean, that team, what he did through the portal.
Hate Kurt Signetti because of the
they do. They do.
Go ahead. I'm sorry. I cut you off.
No, you're good. You're good. They definitely hate him because he's pretty cocky, but he backs it up. I'm interested to see that game. I think Indiana could win that game. And who knows? I don't know if they can make a deep run, but that's certainly something. If someone would have told you, Aaron, before the year, Indiana's not only going to make the playoffs, but they're going to win a game in round 1. I think all of us would have been like, dude, drug test that person. What are you talking about? It's Indiana. I think that's going to be a good one. I'm excited for the Penn State game. We'll see. One of the interesting things that's come out in the recent couple days that I'm pretty disappointed about is the college football playoffs. kind of hostile takeovers of these home games where they're going to cover logos and they're in charge of the music and the video board.
Oh.
Like, it's not going to be a real home game. Like, you're not going to get Mo Bamba on third down at Penn State. Like, that's criminal to me. But they're all going to be good games. And I think literally anybody could win any of these games.
Do you think that, like Oregon's undefeated and, they're obviously the only undefeated team. Do you think there's because there's been a narrative all year, there's been no great teams. And obviously I know Oregon's not playing this weekend, but do you think like they're a step above everybody else? Or do you just think just because of the circumstances that, I guess you can't really say they're a step above everybody else because they, won by 1 point, 2 point against Ohio State. But do you think that there's should be the favorite independent of the draw? I know they obviously have a little bit of a tough draw with that Tennessee, Ohio State situation.
Yeah, I think they're the best team in the country. Now, the best team in the country certainly can lose a game. They got Ohio State at closer to full strength. Josh Simmons, the first round left tackle, everyone's telling me, went down in that game. But other than that, they had every other lineman available. Now they're down their 3 of their top 6, and they're talking about shuffling, rotating guards. They're a mess on the offensive line. So I think they took a healthy Ohio State's best shot. And I don't know that another team will be able to give them one like that, but I love that team. I love Dan Lanning. I think Dylan Gabriel's outstanding. The run game, Jordan James, the skill on the perimeter is probably the best group in the country outside of Ohio State, and their defense is legit. So, you'd like to think if Ohio State can get back to a rematch, Denzel Burke's not going to have the worst day of his entire life, and you might be able to make some better play calls in a 2-minute drill to try to go win the game. But they're certainly not infallible, but I think they're the best team in the pool.
Last one, the one game we didn't talk about this coming weekend, Texas and Clemson. I was of the personal belief that if you're going to bench Quinn Ewers for Arch Manning in game 1, why are you not doing it in the SEC championship game? But I bring it. I remember when he was in high school, there was really only one media member that had the to take on the Manning family and say, I don't really know if the film tells me that this guy is what he says he is. Do you have any, because I remember in high school, you weren't totally sold on Arch Manning. Have you seen enough? Do you know enough to have any strong opinion on what Texas should do with the quarterback position?
No, I think this year he's answered a lot of questions. He came in, his high school tape was, it was embarrassing. And not that he played bad, but just the competition was pathetic.
Really?
And he didn't really do much on film to make you super excited other than his last name. And he was a far better player than anyone else on the field because they were so bad. And he struggled his freshman year at Texas. His first spring on campus, he all the reports, everyone that was at practices was like, yeah, he's a long ways away, but you always saw he had tools. And Steve Sarkisian, I think, is probably the unheralded quarterback guru in the country from all the quarterbacks he developed at USC, Washington, everywhere. And so if there's a guy to do it, it was him. And this year I've been very impressed with Arch Manning. And I've said it since Quinn started struggling early in the year. This feels like Tua Tagovailoa in the national championship game. At some point, because Quinn Ewers has been a big reason why Texas has struggled at times.
No doubt.
And at some point, it's like, we can't lose this one and still make the playoffs. This is it. This is the playoffs. If we lose this one, we go home. And at some point, Sark might have to make that tough call. And I think it's inevitable. Maybe not against Clemson, because I think Clemson's defense is trash. But at some point, if Texas can beat Clemson, at some point, Quinn Ewers is going to have some adversity, and he's going to have to make a tough call.
Yeah, it's the push-pull balance. Everything we were talking about with Belichick is you want to keep the QB room together and all that, but it's dude, Ewers is basically, it's reported he's out after this year. He's either going to go pro or whatever. It's Arch's team after this year. I think you got to make the move, but whatever. Not my team, not my problem. So, all right, Zach Smith, man, dude, I can talk to you all day. You got some film to break down. I know it's the cliche thing to ask at the end of every interview, but I know you do a lot of stuff. But beyond the show, just tell everybody listening that likes the football talk what you're doing on the daily.
Yeah, I think the most unique thing we do is we do all 22 film breakdowns. I've just from my network, I have access to all 22 film, and so I just break down pretty much the best games every weekend. I think we did about 60 plus games this year, and it's just an hour-long breakdown of Georgia's off. I just finished before this Tennessee's defense against Carson Beck and Georgia's offense. And it's just you can really see reality. And I like to think I add a little bit of insight to it, but even if I'm an idiot, watching the All 22 film just opens your eyes to so much. That's all on our website, menacetosports.com. You can check it out. I put out a couple teasers, I think, on Rumble or somewhere where, because YouTube flags everything for me. So I can't put anything like that on YouTube, but it's cool. It's fun. I'm a football junkie, so I love it.
Perfect. Well, the show again is Menace to Sports, noon Eastern, Monday through Friday. Dude, I appreciate the time. We'll reconnect here at some point, dude. But I appreciate you, man, and we'll talk soon. All right.
All right, everybody. I'm back. Good to be back. So first of all, thank you to Zach Smith. Zach's the man. Again, Menace to Sports is his pod, is his show, Monday through Friday, talking a lot of Ohio State, a lot of college football. Really quick before we get out of here, I was planning on going home after the Zach Smith interview, but we just got late breaking news out of the transfer portal. And what is the conversation that we have been having all show long? It is the portal. It is the state of things. Well, it is very interesting because just minutes ago, USC lost former 5-star wide receiver Zachariah Branch. It has been announced that he will enter the transfer portal. This is via Hayes Fawcett, via On3. And I am just here to say, boy, oh boy, oh boy, what the heck is happening at USC? So USC, listen, you don't need me to tell you, a little bit of a debacle of a season. By the way, thank you, producer Matt, for getting that graphic ready to go in short amount of time. But what a weird situation at USC, okay? And let me do the Aaron right, Aaron wrong thing and just acknowledge I have been so wrong on Lincoln Riley. I really thought Lincoln Riley coming from Oklahoma to USC, that this guy was going to be gangbusters. Now, maybe selfishly a little bit of it is that I live in Los Angeles. It would be great if USC was kind of relevant on the national scale. But I just could not have imagined that what we are seeing is actually what is the reality for USC. So 2 seasons ago, not this past year where you go 7-5, but the year before when they went 8-4, they were 7-5 last year as well. That was the last year with Caleb Williams. And I did give Lincoln Riley a little bit of a pass. The defense was an absolute abomination. I didn't think it was Lincoln Riley's best moment as a head coach. I thought that, too often they let Caleb kind of cook a little bit too much, and they let Caleb get a little bit too loose with the football. But coming into this year, I kind of said, okay, we need to see a little bit more balance, right? Because last year it was, Caleb, we're going to kind of let him freelance. And then by the end of the year, it was like, we just can't get Caleb killed. He's going to be the number 1 pick. The defense is terrible. I needed to see improvement from the defense in terms of on the field product. They beat LSU. You think everything's going to be okay. But here is the crazy part, is the fact that after they beat LSU, they basically lost to everybody else that mattered, right? Lose to Michigan on the road, lose to Notre Dame at home, lose to Penn State at home, lose at Minnesota, lose at Maryland, lose at Washington. And what's crazy is even during the season, I think I gave USC kind of the benefit of the doubt. You look at all of their losses. You look at what happened on the field. They weren't that far off. They were up 20-6 against Penn State. They had the ball twice in the red zone in the final 5 minutes and could not convert against Washington. So I kind of sat there and said, okay, listen, I gave Lincoln Riley the benefit of the doubt last year. I sort of tried to give him the benefit of the doubt this year going into next year. But you look at what has happened since the season ended, it is just a debacle of epic proportions. And really, it just speaks to, I don't know what the heck is going on at USC right now, but it is not good. So if you follow me on Twitter at Aaron_Torres, make sure you're following me. I just put out this tweet while we were talking to Zach Smith. Lincoln Riley's first recruiting class at SC, okay? Lincoln Riley's first recruiting class at SC had 3 5-stars in that class. It was Zachariah Branch, Deuce Robinson, and Malachi Nelson, the quarterback. Now, even if you want to, argue that Malachi Nelson was overrated, this was the kid that transferred after last season from Boise State, or from USC to Boise State, got beat out for the starting job and has since transferred again. Even if you want to argue that kid was overrated, Zachariah Branch and Deuce Robinson were 2 very key pieces to what was an otherwise not very good offense, not good offense relative to this past season, not good relative to the season, okay? Deuce Robinson this year as a tight end, 23 catches, 5 touchdown receptions. That was second most on the team. Also, Zachariah Branch, 47 catches, tied for the most along with running back Woody Marks, 503 yards receiving and 1 touchdown. Now, maybe the argument is you needed to use him a little bit more because Zachariah Branch is one of the great athletes that we have in college football. I cannot believe that he only accounted for 1 touchdown. Last year, he only had 2 receiving touchdowns. He did have a kick return for a touchdown as well as a rushing touchdown a year ago. But yeah, if I'm Zachariah Branch, I'm kind of pissed off about the fact that, by the way, that my coach doesn't know how to get me the football. So Zachariah Branch has entered the portal. As I said, 3 5-stars in Lincoln Riley's first class. They are all in the portal. And a couple quick things on this. One, as far as Zachariah Branch is concerned, I thought it was very interesting. Hayes Fawcett, who is very plugged in. I love Hayes. He follows me. I follow him. Someday, not during portal season, would love to get him on the show and talk about what his everyday life is like. But I bring it up because Hayes Fawcett just minutes ago tweeted out that, let me see if I can find this tweet here really quick. Okay, so let's see here. Let me find the Hayes Fawcett tweet. He tweeted out, this was interesting. He said, these were Zachariah Branch's finalists in high school: Alabama, Ohio State, Oklahoma, and USC. Let me put it this way. Hayes is a smart kid. I don't know him, but he's a very smart kid. He's very good at what he does. He does not put out that tweet if there is 0% chance that Zachariah Branch is going to any of those schools. Like if we don't know if the recruitment is wide open, then my guess is that he just kind of just says, hey, this is whatever. I think the fact that he put that out is kind of hinting at the fact that maybe one of those schools will be a finalist. So if you're looking for a silver lining, if you're an Alabama fan, maybe the silver lining is, hey, you're losing everybody. Jalen Mbakwe, we'll see what happens. But maybe there's the possibility that this kid ends up at Alabama. By the way, Courtney Morgan, he's from California. He's a West Coast guy. USC tried to hire him as Alabama's GM. Does that mean that Alabama would be in the running? Obviously, Ohio State, I would love to see him at Ohio State because you look at the fact that they're going to have Jeremiah Smith back next year. They're going to have Carnell Tate back next year. I mean, that would be as dynamic of a wide receiver room as we could possibly have. But to me, this is, I don't think, stunning, because we've talked about it all offseason. But, one, you lose Deuce Robinson. You lose Miller Moss. I actually didn't think Miller Moss was really the problem, even though he wasn't great. I didn't even mention you lose Kyron Hudson, who, of course, committed to Penn State on Monday afternoon. So you now lost 3 marquee receivers plus your starting quarterback. And I'm just here to say, this Lincoln Riley thing is not working out. And he just is not who we thought he was. I just think there's something going on. There's a disconnect. I've heard kind of locally that I don't even think he's trying to recruit locally anymore. Like the one thing I would say about USC really quick. This is all off the cuff, by the way. This news just happened in the last 5 minutes. What I would say about USC, I don't really even know what their recruiting plan is. They're not recruiting Southern California very hard. We've all seen the stats, but remember, I think the stat was of the top 10 players in Southern California, 4 committed to Alabama, 2 have committed to USC. Alabama, no disrespect, and I understand it's a portal world, it's an NIL world. Alabama should not be getting twice as many marquee players out of the state of California as SC is. But SC has no local base. Nationally, it's this weird thing where they were really aggressive in the portal early on. Now I don't think they're getting guys. They're trying to recruit a bunch of kids from Georgia and the South, and I don't think it's bad to go get a player or 2, but your base has to be the West Coast, Southern California, etc. And so I think what is especially concerning if you're an SC fan is now you're losing the kids from the West Coast that you had locked up. You had Zachariah Branch, who's from Vegas, locked up. You had Miller Moss, who's a West Coast kid, locked up. You had Deuce Robinson, who's an Arizona kid, locked up. And those kids are now leaving. And so I just bring it up because what a debacle at USC. Zachariah Branch is officially in the portal. My sense is he will not be the last guy. But you talk about, I would argue maybe your 3 most high-profile wide receivers, You're supposed to be the quarterback offensive whisperer, and two of your top 3 receivers, and then Deuce Robinson, who was second on the team in touchdown receptions, are all in the portal. Yeah, there's something really bad going on at SC. Tell you what, I was going to get to some questions, but producer Matt, I think I actually got to get out of here. I got some stuff to do this afternoon. It is time for me to go. If you're not subscribed to the Aaron Torres pod, please make sure to do so. Apple, Spotify, Amazon Music, Google Music, wherever you listen to podcasts, please make sure that you are subscribed. Make sure to rate and review the show as well. Give us a quick 5 stars. Let us know what you like, what you don't like, all that good stuff. To those of you that were in the live chat today, the live chat was as lively as we have had it in quite some time. So thank you for being part of it. Appreciate all of your support. Appreciate your guys' support of the show. December is rocking. December is rolling. But for now, it is time for me to get out of here. Shout out to Torrent Craig. Shout out to Rachel, who hates my voice. By the way, I didn't even mention this. Thank you to Zach Smith for making some time on today's show. What a show. Appreciate everybody's support. We will be back Thursday, probably, on the Aaron Torres pod. That's assuming nothing crazy happens on Wednesday. Appreciate you. Talk soon.